Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It is a Saturday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody has had a nice weekend so far. We're sitting here waiting for a cold front to move on through. And in the meantime, we've got a couple of things going on elsewhere. There's a hurricane out in the Pacific, Hurricane Lane, which is a Category 4 hurricane. We're going to talk about that in short order. And we're also going to take a look at some of the radar action that's going on in northeastern part of the United States as we have a cold front that's finally moving through with some downpours and some strong thunderstorms. Last I checked, I did not see anything from the standpoint of severe thunderstorms, but we're gonna check for sure a bit later on because I want to start off tonight by talking about Hurricane Lane. Now, just those of you who were on tonight, Scott Briller, Johnny Quest, Anthony Orr, Larry Stepak, if just let me know that the audio is okay. I did a little bit of adjusting. I want to make sure that you're hearing me without too much distortion and that the volume levels are okay. So if you can just kind of post a little comment about that, I would appreciate it. There were some storms on Long Island, Scott. They actually formed over and just east of me. So I had two opportunities this afternoon where we had the sun out and we had some rain coming down at the same time. But that first batch just kind of formed more along the lines of the sea breeze front, it seemed, that sort of set up right over Long Island today. And now we've got the frontal thunderstorms that were to my north and west, and they're beginning to move to the southeast. So we'll address all that in just a bit. I think we'll start off with Hurricane Lane, and we're going to go to the wide satellite view here. You can find all of this, by the way, if you go to nhc.noaa.gov and just click on satellite on data, and satellite option comes down, and you can pull up all these loops if you're interested. There's Lane in the middle of the picture. You can see Hawaii off to the middle left. And if I shift the picture over a little bit on the right, you can see the coast of Mexico and Baja California. So it's pretty far along. And it's crossing 140 degrees west at the moment, which means that it gets handed off, the responsibility gets handed off from the National Hurricane Center in Miami to the Central Pacific Hurricane Center in Honolulu. So they will be now left with the challenge of what to do with this as we watch it move off to the west. Now, on the tight enhanced satellite view, and this, by the way, you can find on tropicaltidbits.com. If you click on satellite, you can pull up any storms. Again, that's at tropicaltidbits.com, and we appreciate that that Levi Cowan allows us to share it and use it, and I want to make sure I give ample credit. So if you look at the enhanced loop, a couple of things that stand out. First off, you've got that rather symmetric look that Category 4 hurricanes have. Top winds here 140 miles an hour. There's a well-defined eye. Looks like it's gotten a little bit tighter. The cloud tops, there were some minus 70, minus 80 degree cloud tops here. They've warmed a bit in the last few hours. And most of the models going forward with this have at least seem to be indicating that we've reached peak intensity with regards to the strength. This, to me, in my mind, remains to be seen because of the fact that with Hector, they wrote Hector off too soon with respect to intensity and shear, and it kind of held together a bit longer than modeled, and then actually came back after a while after it passed south of Hawaii. And there are a few questions when we go to the longer term, and I'll show you what's going on in just a second. But the other thing is it's still only at about 12, 13 degrees. Looks like it's just about getting closer down to 13 degrees north. And on the longitude, it's just crossed 140. It still has to gain some latitude in order for it to become a threat to Hawaii. Hector didn't make it much above 16.5 north. So this may wind up not making it much above 15 or 16 north. So it may actually track further south than Hector did. But there are some questions regarding that going forward. Now, here is, we'll bring up the Hurricane Center's forecast. And you can see that the Hurricane Center has it going, basically west-northwest, and then a wobble to the west, but it never really gets it to 15 north until it gets to around 155 west, and that's a full 240 miles south of Hawaii. And it also weakens it in terms of their forecast. They are weakening it, and they actually have it down to tropical storm strength, citing a colder ocean, and some of that could be left over from upwelling with Hector. We have perhaps a bit more hostile conditions in the upper atmosphere in terms of wind shear than we had with Hurricane Hector. So these factors may all come into play. And as I've said many times before, if you, hurricane history is riddled with storms, Category 3 and 4 storms that get very close to Hawaii and make it out to about 150, and you think they're taking dead aim on the islands, and then they somehow just find a way to weaken. There's a bit of a protective shield that seems to exist. And actually, if we go back to the full satellite loop here, the larger picture, if you take a look at some of the clouds around the Hawaiian Islands, you'll notice that you've got one layer of clouds moving from east to west, and then you've got another layer of clouds higher up in the atmosphere moving from west to east. And that's telling you that there's some wind shear going on here in the upper atmosphere. And you could also see evidence of that, by the way, if you go south to the latitude of where Hurricane Lane is. As it gets a little bit further to the west, you see you can see the clouds south of the Big Island of Hawaii. The brighter white cloud tops seem to be blowing more from west to east, with the lower clouds moving from east to west. So you do have some hostile conditions there. Now, whether they're still there or as hostile as the hurricane approaches remains to be seen, but that seems to be the way the models are seeing this. Now, as far as the models are concerned, here are the hurricane tracking models, and they all seem to take the hurricane near or north of 15 degrees north, but they also all take them to the south of the island, turning them to the west-northwest. And there are a couple of them that actually straddle the islands fairly closely, but not, this is, again, in terms of size, this hurricane perhaps a little bit bigger than Hurricane Hector it was in terms of the radius, but I'm sorry, the diameter of the storm from north to south and from east to west, but it's not that much bigger. So it's going to have to make a really close pass to have any kind of land impact. So if any of these tracks verify, except maybe the northernmost tracks, it would likely be minimal impact. Of course, these tracks will all have impact on the coastal waters. And the other question is, well, what system are we going to be dealing with at this point? If the upper air wind conditions are a bit more hostile this time around than they were with Hector, are we going to be dealing with a much weaker system? Are we going to be dealing with a hurricane, or are we going to be dealing with a tropical storm? That is going to be on the table for the CPHC, the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, to figure out. And they certainly have the experience. I don't, with regards to how things behave. I mean, I'm just kind of going by what I've seen over the years on the occasions when there have been storms out here. But from a practical day-to-day forecast standpoint, I'm not sitting in Hawaii right now, so it's hard for somebody like me, a forecaster on the other side of the United States, trying to figure out what the impacts are, if there are going to be any impacts, and just exactly how these things behave. So I can only watch and learn with you as we take a look at this. Now, the other thing to look at is the intensity guides. Again, these, by the way, again, tropicaltidbits.com. Thank you again for letting us use this. But if you look at the model intensity guidance, actually, most of the intensity models seem to indicate that Lane has reached its peak now and will start to gradually weaken over the next 5 days. There are a couple of them that hold it steady, at 115 knots. But it looks like the vast majority of them want to take it down from here. So it'll be interesting to see now that it's crossed 140. Do we start to see a bit of weakening now, or are we going to see it maybe in about 48 hours and beyond as it gets a bit further to the west? So a lot of things to consider. Now, I want to show you, by the way, before we get to the local weather here, I want to take you to the GFS model, because it did a couple of squirrely things with regards to this hurricane, and I want to take a look if the new run does the same thing. So here it is now at 140 west. Here is the new GFS. So it's going to take us out a little over 5 days. That's as far as we have at the moment. So you can see the surface track is mainly to the west, and then it starts to kind of inch it up a little bit more toward the north. And we are at 126 hours, which is as far as it goes. It looks like it's in line with the track model guidance here, very close to it. But the funny thing was, I'm going to go back a couple of runs. I'm going to go back to the overnight run. And the overnight run did this really weird thing. You see how it just basically takes it, right toward the big island and weakening it rapidly as it did this, and then just sits it south of the other islands as it drifts it westward as a tropical depression. The 6Z run was slightly different, but kind of the same idea in that, it has it, again, we'll start it at 140. We're going into Monday and Tuesday, and here we are Wednesday into Thursday, and then it suddenly, just jumps almost due northward, passing just west of the big island, just south of Honolulu, and weakening it. And then it turned it back westward, and then on and up it went across the international date line and beyond. And the 12Z run, which was the run right before the very first one I showed you, kind of did the same idea, but was a little bit further to the south. And there it is. Kind of takes this jog, it's almost straight north to right toward Honolulu, and it actually maintained it as a strong tropical storm as it did this over the westernmost islands of Kauai, and then on up northwest from there. So why is it doing this? Well, just like in the last instance, we were at the mercy of this upper ridge, and there's a bit of a trough in the middle. And if you watch what happens over time, there's still some semblance of troughing there. Although the ridge tries to build somewhat, there is a bit of a weakness. It's the ridge line seems to be further north this time around, allowing this system to respond to that weakness, and that's why it does what it does. Last time around, if you remember, we had an upper ridge that built north of the Hawaiian Islands, and that really kind of took Hector and kept it much further to the south. So here is the view on the 18Z run, and you can see from the beginning there is a trough here. This was as of yesterday. There was a trough that extended down to Hawaii. There's an upper ridge on either side. The trough tries to pull out, but there is still some weakness here, at least enough to try to pull this a little bit further north to gain some latitude. And then gradually the ridge is going to try and build back, but it doesn't quite get there. So, it leaves some room for, it certainly puts some doubt in here this time around in terms of what could happen. Maybe there's enough weakness in the upper air to allow this to gain some latitude once it gets west of 150 degrees west. I think that's a big question here that we're going to have to tackle over the next couple of days. I think there's enough doubt, let's put it, enough there. I think there are enough questions in the structure of the upper air where we have to be a little bit careful. Here's how it looks from the standpoint of the entire Pacific, and you gain a little perspective here of what you're dealing with. You've got this big cutoff in the Gulf of Alaska that extends the trough down to Hawaii. Ridge off along the west coast, ridge on the other side of that trough near the international date line. And you see how the Gulf of Alaska upper low just lifts out. So the trough is gone, but there's still some weakness here. You're not replacing it but with a strong ridge. You've got this narrow east-west ridge that runs from north of the Hawaiian Islands along about 30 and 40 degrees northwestward all the way to the coast of Japan. And the strongest part of the ridge is actually further north. So there's there's enough weakness here to create some doubt in terms of the overall forecast. So again, we're going to pay attention to this in a big way over the next couple of days to see if models take us in this direction. I think it's worth looking at the European as well to see how it resolves all this. And starting from today, where we've got this deep wrapped up cutoff low in the Gulf of Alaska, much like the GFS, the European has this thing tracking further to the south than the GFS and some of the hurricane track models. And I think it's because of the fact that the European actually has a bit of a stronger signature in terms of the ridge and has it pushing down maybe a little bit further to the south. So lane gets to get deflected more to the west over time. You can see it here, the way the European sees this upper high sort of enveloping the islands a bit, and lane responding to that and moving more westward and weakening. So I think that's an option to consider also, that this could wind up being, never getting north of 15 degrees north and just moving right along and not being really a bother except to marine interests. So again, much to consider when it comes to Hurricane Lane, and a lot of stuff that we're going to be watching in the coming days. Okay, let's go to what's going on locally so we can take a look at the radar at the moment. Let me give the page a refresh here, get a brand new radar. And in fact, it's kind of getting very dark where I am. So if these thunderstorms are still holding together with some vigor, might hear some thunder in a few minutes or so. But there's the line. One of the things I noticed that I was reading on Twitter, I like someone called Cranky Weather Guy. If you are on Twitter and you want to follow somebody who I think really knows his stuff, you should follow him on Twitter. He's really very good, and I'm actually quite honored that he only follows 99 people, and I'm one of them. So I think that is so cool. I'm floored by it, actually. Anyway, you take a look at his stuff, and he described the radar echoes earlier. Just kind of looked like almost like a rope, very narrow band. Some of the storms in there in that type of a look that you see on the radar sometimes can often create some rather small but some rather intense cells. So we're watching this squall line as it moves southeastward to see if that's the case. This is all part of the weather front, by the way, that is coming on through. Also, if you look on Long Island, at the first couple of frames there, you can see some thunderstorms that are formed south of that. That is kind of what happens when you get a sea breeze front, basically, that develops. The sea breeze pushes inland only so far, and there's a frontal, a very weak localized front that develops, and you wind up with developing cloud tops and a narrow band of thunderstorms. And I've seen them literally sometimes here, where the thunderstorms just line up right along the Long Island Expressway, which is the main east to west roadway. If you don't live out here, it's the main east to west roadway that runs across Long Island, kind of cuts it right in the middle. You see this line of storms that forms very narrow. Sometimes they're only blocks wide. They could, a quarter of a mile wide, maybe a half a mile wide from one side to the other, and it pours like crazy when you're inside of it. But either side of it, you're into some sunshine, and that's what kind of happens here. You see it a lot down in Florida. You see it a lot as you move off the southeast coast, and then sometimes when it gets hot enough up here, and when it gets very humid, and usually we see these things during the month of August. That's usually when we see these active sea breeze fronts show up. But in the meantime, the main front is coming down and moving southeastward. So I think what I'll do right now is I'm going to go to the let's pull up the Weather Service page at weather.gov, which you should always do if you're watching this on a replay, because it's obviously dated. We're at 6:20 Eastern time. You can see, by the way, on the this is the Upton office, and we've got this flash flood watch that's up for New Jersey. We've got various flood advisories up as well. We don't have any severe thunderstorm warnings up at the moment. Here's the radar view from Upton, and the storms now, that regional view tends to be delayed by a bit, but those storms now are actually, they're just about over me because it's getting really dark out. But they run right off the southeast Connecticut coast, across Long Island Sound to about me, back to about New York City. We've got some other storms in northern New Jersey. They look like they were just a little bit weaker. We do have a severe thunderstorm warning up there for Ocean County in central New Jersey because of that cell that is east of Trenton, just south of Route 195. So that is the Weather Service office in Philadelphia. So we can take a look at their radar. This is the perspective from the Fort Dix radar, and that line is kind of snaking there over Long Island. It shows it over me, and it's dark, but I'm not really seeing anything. It's not raining at the moment, and I'm not hearing any thunder or seeing any lightning. But that kind of snakes back over into northern New Jersey. I've got a few of my friends that are at the MetLife Center right now for the Kenny Chesney concert, so I'm wondering whether they might be getting some downpours there at the moment. And that line, by the way, snakes back into eastern Pennsylvania along and going either side of Route 78 to just east of Harrisburg. So that pretty much covers the extent of the activity in the moment. And I'll bring the radar view back so we can take a look at what's happening elsewhere across the United States. And the frontal boundary runs from southern New England, from just south of Boston through southern Connecticut, across into Pennsylvania, and then extending into the Ohio Valley. There are some stronger storms going on in the Carolinas, and also some downpours and some fairly widespread activity across southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and Georgia. We have action going on in Florida at the moment. And here's a wider view, a tighter view. We'll take you into the southeast. Looks like we're seeing some heavy cells right now in and around Port Charlotte, down to Naples and Sarasota and Florida. Every day the action seems to be in a bit of a slightly different place geographically, but then today it's back to the West Coast again. You can see the activity that's going on throughout the Gulf states. Gets a bit more scattered and as you go into Texas, and then we've got the monsoon stuff going on in New Mexico and parts of Arizona. That seems to be a bit less than what was there yesterday, and it's still getting plenty of storms up in the central and northern Rockies. This is now coming up, by the way, to 6:25 Eastern time. So once again, reminder, watching this later, warnings, you need the latest information, so the radars are dated. You want to go to weather.gov and go to your local National Weather Service office, forecast office website to take a look at what is going on. So let's come back to the models and talk about where we're going here in the longer term. I'm going to center this a bit better for you so you can take a look. And let's, I think we'll start with, we'll go to the GFS, and we'll talk about the action that we're thinking is going to happen overall. And the big deal this coming week, and this is something that we've been watching closely, the big question for many days has been, will there or won't there be a deep enough trough in the east to bring down some real humidity relief? Now, there is going to be a little bit of humidity relief tomorrow and Monday, and even into Monday night before the dew points come up again ahead of the next cold front. But it was for the latter part of this week that the models were going back and forth on the idea of whether there was going to be some really strong relief from the humidity where the dew points would get down into the 40s or not. And it seems like we are going in the direction that it is going to happen. This is the upper trough when we go into Wednesday. uh, it it is rather deep here into the eastern part of the United States, and there's going to be a very good solid push of cool, dry air behind it. Even though eventually the trough, part of it lifts up and part of it gets left behind and weakens right overhead. The bottom line is that it is going to drag some cooler, drier Canadian air down for Thursday and Friday of next week, and maybe some of that dry air could last into the start of next weekend before you get into a bit of a ridge that comes back into the East Coast. And then there's some question about whether we're going to finish the month off with, there you go. Now we got the thunder and lightning. I saw a flash outside. But then the question is going to be whether we're going to get into a big ridge position here into the eastern part of the United States, or is it going to be one of these flat east-west ridges where it gets hot, but it doesn't get crazy hot. We're talking here now toward the end of the month. 90-degree highs start to get tougher and tougher to achieve, particularly in a year where you've had a lot of rain and a very wet ground. This is not like we've been in the desert around here, and when you have very dry conditions, you can certainly add an extra 3, 4, 5 degrees to the equation. But when your soil moisture content is high, we saw it this week with models forecasting highs of 94, 95, 96, and most areas only making it to 89, 90, 91, and that's been it. So the models have been, trying to shoot things up by about 4 or 5 degrees too high. Is that ever going to be the same going into that last weekend of August? I don't know. The other question is, well, how real is this ridge? The 12Z run today kind of has a flattish look to it. There's still energy in the northern jet, or at least enough energy in the northern jet to try to bring in some troughing into the east, and actually builds a stronger ridge over time back in the middle part of the U.S. So something like this would probably bring some relief to at least the humidity in the Northeast and even down into the northern mid-Atlantic states, while areas from the Ohio Valley west into the middle and upper Mississippi Valley and the northern plains would see the bulk of the hot temperatures. So I think that's where the big question is. Are you going to have a ridge that sets up near the coast, or is it going to set up more in the middle, where we're going to at least be in a northwest flow aloft, or at least in enough of a northwest flow aloft to keep the humidity under control, and occasionally keeping the temperatures under control as well. Now, as far as the day-to-day weather is concerned, let's look at where we're going over the next few days, because we are going to be dealing with this front today that's going to stall out and put us in an onshore flow for tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. And I think the question for tomorrow is whether there will be clouds and some lingering showers or even some patchy light rain around early in the day. What's happening is that the front is slow enough as it is. It's going to get hung up again, and we're going to get a bit of a wave that develops on it. So we'll have to wait for that wave to develop and move out in order to push the front further south. To the northeast, you've got a high in the Canadian Maritime provinces. To the west, in the plains, you've got the next low that's going to be coming out of there and heading northeastward. So this almost looks like something you'd see in the fall or in the winter or in the spring, where you get this onshore flow and the high to the northeast, and you're sending a low to the lakes with a warm front. Now that's what's going to happen to this front. It's going to eventually just settle down somewhere in Virginia, and then start to turn around and come back up as a warm front along about Tuesday. So we are going to see the dew points come up. We are going to see probably an increasing chance for downpours and thunderstorms Tuesday night into Wednesday until the front goes by offshore. And then after that, this is where we get the next high to come in. It's not a strong one, but it's strong enough. And we do get some dew point relief from this. If we take a look at the dew points, okay, they've hidden my dew points. I think I got to go to the other geography to see the dew points. All right, usually they're on the, oh, because I'm sorry, I was in the wrong place. But let's look at in fact, I want to take a look at this regionally here on the eastern U.S. You can see it all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Um, a bit of a difference from some of the prior runs is now I guess the models are just trying to balance the strength of the trough, which would, one of the runs that we had yesterday actually wanted to bring dew points in the low 60s all the way down to New Orleans and the Florida Panhandle. That's pretty unusual to see in mid-August, to see the extent of dry air going that far south. Get into mid-September, that's another story, but it would be a little bit early. But you certainly can see the impact here by the time we get to Thursday. We've got dew points in the low 50s and even the 40s and even some 30s up in upstate New York. This will be a great day to go to Saratoga next Thursday with dew points in the 30s. And those low dew points going into Friday night, Thursday night, we've got dew points in the mid 40s, which is great. And during the day on Friday, dew points in the 40s to near 50. Even on Saturday, we still have dew points in the 50s. Pushing it along into Sunday, still holding on to dew points in the 50s. From our lips to God's ears, I hope this is right, because that would give us basically 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'll take it at least to Saturday. I don't know about Sunday, but at least to Saturday where it'll be comfortable. And it'll be depending on, how that upper ridge winds up building back when we go into the long haul. By the way, we are also going to get some dew point relief here tomorrow. If you notice, from about New York City northeast and northward, the dew points do come down into the 50s and low 60s. Eventually, some of that penetrates a little further south Sunday night and Monday, but the dew points come back up. When we get into Wednesday, ahead of that next cold front, we're back into dew points in the 70s, but it's a brief visit of dew points in the 70s, because after that, the dew points just crash, and we get into that drier air later Wednesday night, and Thursday. Now, as far as the Atlantic tropics are concerned, you know where I'm going with this. We'll take a look at the Atlantic tropics. So here's your tropical weather outlook. Here's a shock. Hurricane Center has no tropical storm cyclone formation in the next 48 hours or in the next 5 days. Now, we've had 5 named storms, okay, and 2 of them have become hurricanes. We're in the middle of August. So technically, that puts us actually well above normal. But the storms have come, except for Hurricane Beryl, which was back in the beginning of July, if I remember correctly, and it was basically a glorified severe thunderstorm in the tropical Atlantic. Except for that, and Chris, which formed off the southeast coast of the United States and then just kind of took off and was of no factor whatsoever. We haven't really seen anything form in the Caribbean. Alberto in May went into the Florida Panhandle, but that was no big deal. But we haven't seen anything form in the tropical Atlantic. We haven't seen anything form in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Caribbean since. Now, if you look, the other day we were looking at a wave that was east of Venezuela and moving westward. And, of course, it was going to be running into hostile conditions as it moved into the Eastern Caribbean, which is exactly what's been happening. And the wave is extremely weak and very, you can't even define it. Now, there is something, if you look on the right, on the lower right, it looks like there's something coming off the African coast of size, but the big question is it going to get decimated by the strong upper level winds that continue to dominate across the tropical Atlantic that has been shearing these systems apart? And I have to wonder whether it's going to be the same thing with anything that comes off there. Models have been, rather dull on the idea of anything developing in the major development region, and I don't really see anything that changes that perspective. I'll pull up the GFS on the tropical view, and here we go, and we'll take a look. It's funny because in so many years we're so used to these models basically spinning everything out of control, and now we find ourselves sitting in the opposite position. We're waiting for them to spin something out of control from a forecast standpoint, and it's just not happening. So you're basically you're still looking at conditions that are just not that favorable. Now here's in about 4 days. I mean, here's where you have a system that does emerge off the African coast, and there is a closed low there. This is by the end of this coming week, but you can see how the GFS just sort of loses it as it moves westward, and that's probably telling you that the upper air conditions are not going to be all that conducive. Then there's looks like another wave of some sort coming out in about 9 days. This is on Monday, August 27th. There looks like there's some kind of closed surface low near the Cabo Verde Islands, but even this doesn't do very much. You know what? I'm going to try to see if I can get this on a different. Let's try to look at this on the. Yeah, this might let us see it a bit better. So here's the old run because it goes out a bit further. You know, you do have lower pressures down there near the Cabo Verde Islands. You've got this east-west high across the Atlantic from the Azores to Bermuda. That just sits out there. But you know, it just to me, you really don't see the model doing anything. Now, there's something at the very end of the period. We're now on September 3rd. Okay, so we're actually at Labor Day at this point. The other thing the day run did, which was kind of ridiculous, was it drops this low from the eastern Great Lakes. The upper feature actually cuts off and then takes this surface low and just drops it southwestward. It goes from Michigan to Chesapeake Bay, to just west of Charleston to just east of New Orleans. By the time we get to the 3rd of September, I saw that and I thought, boy, that's really kind of odd. How many times have I seen something like that? I think I recall seeing something like that maybe once over the last many years that I've been following this. So you know, again, I don't see the upper air conditions really improving very much. I'm just going to take a look. I mean, we do have areas of low wind shear at the end of the forecast period, but let's look at this right now. And certainly, if you look as of today, off the African coast, you've got a lot of shear going on here, out to about 35 west. So anything that's coming off is getting pretty much ripped apart. You don't have too much left to get into zones where the wind shear is much lighter as you go to the west later this week, and then that area just kind of disappears. You do have light here. This is what's interesting is where you have the light wind shear is across the Gulf of Mexico, the northern Gulf, and off the southeast coast of the United States as we head toward the end of the month. You know, we've been arguing over the idea that if we're going to see anything develop, you're going to wind up having it to be one of these homegrown storms that occurs in the subtropical Atlantic versus the tropical Atlantic. So until we get some kind of wholesale change in the upper air wind profile in the tropics, it's really going to be a tough sell to get something to develop in the major development region. The Saharan dust, I think, is going to become less of a problem if the region in Africa breaks down, as it appears to want to do. So if that happens, then at least we could take the Saharan dust out of the equation. The ocean water temperatures, the last I checked, they were actually still running a little bit below average, but not crazy below average, generally between dead even to about 1 degree below average. That area covers a good portion of the Atlantic, but all the actual ocean water temperatures are certainly supportive for tropical storm development. There's just nothing out there on the Atlantic side that looks like it wants to get going. Thanks, Nikki. Appreciate it. Hitting super chat tonight. Thank you very much. Let me come back to the board. We gave a big hello to everybody before. Larry Stepak, how much rain do I think Long Island will get tomorrow? You know, I think there's a chance that while there might be a little bit of rain early in the day, that will eventually just kind of quit. And there's some dry air up in New England that could filter its way southward and maybe get the skies to brighten up. I think the best chances of that would be from New York City and Long Island north and east, and a much less of a chance of it happening as you go south through New Jersey and down into Delaware. Robert Hurley, you love summer, you hate winter, but you want cooler weather. Wait till the middle part of next week and beyond. And actually, I'm sorry, technically for cooler weather, if not out of the 70s works for you, you have tomorrow, Monday, and probably even a good chunk of Tuesday that is the case. Kato in Hawaii, we have thunder, lightning, and rain on the east side of the Big Island right now. All right, welcome aboard. I mean, it's nice to see somebody from Hawaii watching. I hope you're still on. Thank you for being here. Abedin Duravac, Kenny Chesney is great. He must be, considering how many people I know that are at that concert tonight. He's got a lot of fans that are on my weather page on Facebook, and on my apparently also on my YouTube channel. Jimmy Z heading out shortly. Good to see you. Good to see the radar. Good. Hope it works for you. I know, Nikki, you're looking for hot weather, but it looks like we're going to get a bit of a break from that until maybe the last days of August, depending on how that upper high sets up. High soil moisture content has been contributing to trees just tipping over. My uncle, this is Timothy Veltman. My uncle works for our town and says the cottonwoods sucked up so much water they're just dropping. Not a surprise. I mean, you've got some places inland across eastern Pennsylvania, the eastern half of Pennsylvania and central Pennsylvania, and down point south into Virginia that have had 500% of normal, 5 times the normal rainfall in the last 30 days. Okay. So, if your normal rainfall, I'm just going to pick some numbers that are probably reasonably close for a summer month, and let's say they're 3 to 4 inches. You're talking 15 to 20 inches of rain as opposed to three or 4. Kato in Hawaii, lucky right now. It's a little wild. Right now. We are near Lapahoho. I hope I said that correct. If I don't, please correct me. Okay. Gotta go. Get away from the windows. Crazy lightning. Dogs are going crazy. All right. Yeah. Be safe. We want you to be safe. Joyce Mack, good evening to you. You hit Super Chat the other day, I think. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, by the way. I forgot. I wanted to say it because I think you did it at the end after I already had been off. Johnny Quest, rain today around lunchtime, rain until next Wednesday. Do you see a front stalling over us any longer? No, you'll get a break after Wednesday. That next front for the middle of next week is going to clear the coast, and you should get into those nice dew points. In fact, the initial push of the cooler air might be a little more south than east, at least initially. So you're going to get a break from this. Okay, I promise you, Johnny Mack. Thank you, Joyce Mack. Yes, I made use of it. I really appreciate it. Thunderstorms are fading out on the south shore of Oceanside. Tells us Iron Mine 10 was impressive, but now it is not. Earl Warren, nice to see you here. Good that you're on. Haven't seen you in a while. I think I did see you pop up the other day. If you guys have any other additional questions, got a little bit of time here tonight, so lay them on me. Greenfire, does the high soil moisture content contribute to higher humidity? Well, I mean, it can. If you've got things like really, really swampy where you are, you could certainly feel it near the bottom of the atmosphere. Eventually, it does evaporate enough where it evens out. But I think it depends on like what your surrounding conditions are. Are you in a dry zone? Are you in an area that's already normally wetter than other areas? So it can play a role. Certainly, the high soil moisture content does play a role when we get into these attempts for hot air and hot air masses. When when we've been in a bone dry pattern where it hasn't rained for months and the ground is baked, well, you get into a heat ridge, you're gonna see temperatures finish up on the high side of the guidance envelope, and conversely, when you have a high soil moisture content, it helps to cool things down. It's a really tough way to cool temperatures down because of the problems that it causes, being that it pours rain for days and days or even weeks at a time, but it does lower the temperatures. It does have an impact on lowering the temperatures. This thunderstorm that's sitting over me is making noise, but it doesn't seem to be. Now it's starting to rain out my way. Let's see. Running to horrible weather in Brooklyn, Mississippi. Is that Brooklyn, Mississippi? Rowie 39425. You have horrible weather in Brooklyn, Mississippi. There's some thunderstorms probably in Brooklyn, New York, too. They're both places are getting hit with some nasty weather. Scott Burler, does the African dust affect ocean temperatures off Africa? Well, if it cuts down on the sunlight, Scott, yeah, it could have a degree or two impact, which sometimes can make a difference. You get widespread dust that cuts the amount of sunlight down, and it's going to, you're going to have some impact on how much heating occurs over the ocean waters. We've got winter weather info from Croatia. Welcome aboard. And by the way, I was a great fan of the Croatian soccer team during the World Cup because I really loved how they played. They were very, very scrappy. They made things happen, and I really enjoyed watching them very, very much. Last summer we had 100 something. This year about 80 and so pleasant. And at the same time, winter weather, you've got info. The heat that occurred over in Western Europe with temperatures over 110 in parts of Spain and Portugal was pretty extreme, and you had temperatures up in the 90s up to Britain. That hot pattern seems to have that has broken down as well. The remnants of Ernesto, by the way, were passing over Ireland this evening and tonight. I honestly didn't really give it a good look as to what happened with that. Let's see. Winter weather. Yeah. Well, you know what? I still they did hold themselves proud during that tournament. Absolutely. First name is Roe or Roe. I'm sorry. Silent. Oh, Silent E. Have to rewatch. No, you know what? I say Roe because I actually work with someone who spells it the same way, but she pronounces it Roe. The stream later power keeps going on and off, messing with the cell phone, the internet, and the Wi-Fi. Yeah, it used to be a simple matter if it turned off the TV or turned off the lights, but now you've got the internet, now you got the Wi-Fi, and all sorts of other problems when you lose power. So I totally get it, and you're quite welcome. Thank you very much for being here on this Saturday. The rain has stopped in Bethpage, says Robert Hurley, just as it started up over me. And I think I got everybody here tonight. Sebastian P. Haven't seen you in a while. Hi to you. I know I got to you a little bit late. Peter Hunsader. Nice to see you here. Jimmy Z talking earlier about the thunder in New Jersey. I think I got everybody. KAU country from Sebastian P. Because you were talking to Mr. Cato. Very good. I like that you guys are all talking to each other. Johnny Quest, try and stay dry and be patient because you are getting your break. And I think that's it. So let me come back. David R. is here, and Patty Matters, showers in southern Georgia. Nice to see you here. I think you're new to the board. Welcome. And I appreciate that you're participating in the chat. David R., same to you. Welcome aboard. We live stream if you're just checking my channel for the first time. We live stream here pretty much every day, usually at 6 o'clock Eastern time. The time does occasionally vary because during the week I'm working another job, so I kind of try to squeeze it in when I can. And I've been this past week because of the weather that's been going on here. The live streams have been more along the lines of 8 o'clock Eastern time. So usually I try to post a time around 4:30 in the afternoon on my channel, so you'll know when the live stream is coming. And the weekends depends on whether I'm burned out. So I wasn't able to do a video yesterday because of the severe weather that was going on in my neck of the woods, which is basically covering eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. So I didn't get to do the live stream. So you're seeing it now. But oftentimes I do try to take one day where I take a breather to try to do it. There we go. I think you guys may have heard that. That was a nice shot of thunder. I'm gonna see. Do I have enough? I don't think I don't have enough cable to get to the window. Let's see. Let's see if this works. Hang on there, folks. Oh, James, NASCAR fan and Green Fire are on. So I'm going to see if I can You're going to have to excuse me because the windows aren't exactly clean. Let me just unravel this. See if I can get this a little bit further. This was not planned, folks, so just stand by. So I'm thinking you should be able to see out my window here. And you can see the dark clouds all the way. That is the southeast where the camera is looking. I'm assuming that you can see the trees, and that's where the bulk of this thunderstorm is at the moment. But you know, we had a bit of a downpour, and then it kind of backed off. Looks like it's raining, but it's not really raining all that heavily. So this is the excitement that I get today with these thunderstorms. You know, next time I'm going to plan this a bit better and whoa, that was a nice flash. Yeah, I didn't like that. That was a pretty loud. That was a pretty loud boomer that just went. We only clean windows in the spring and fall. Timothy Veltman. Yeah, you know, so do we, but it depends on what year. Okay. Okay, so you got to see outside my window. You got to hear it. It's all good. All right, so we're going to end it here at this point. Thank you very much for being here on a Saturday. I know Saturdays are tough in the summertime, particularly when we have only this weekend, next weekend, and then it's the Labor Day weekend, and basically it's summer vacation season is over. You folks down south, your kids are already back to school or about to go back to school, so your summer vacation season is over with. Excuse me. So I appreciate that you've taken the time on to come through and sit through what is now a 52-minute weather video. So thanks for being here. Just as always, just want to mention the fact that if there's a hurricane or a tropical storm that is going to be impacting your area, you want to make sure you get all the latest information, and the go-to sites are the National Hurricane Center, which is nhc.noaa.gov. And for those of you that might be watching in Hawaii, you want to go to the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, which is, you can access that also from nhc.noaa.gov. James CIP, thank you so much, hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it greatly. Thank you. Also, again, a reminder, if you're watching this on a replay, the radars are dated, so you're going to see perhaps activity that doesn't match with what's going on in your particular area. Therefore, you need to check the latest radars and the latest watches and warnings that might be up from the National Weather Service, and you can do that by going to weather.gov and clicking on your local geographic area so that you make sure you have the most current information about what's going on in your particular neck of the woods. Also, just want to mention as well that we are part of the affiliate. We have links on our videos to Amazon and Ebates, and we are members of their affiliate programs, which allow this channel to link to their sites so that you can access them. You can shop at Amazon and use Ebates. You can save extra cash that way. And it's a great way to support my channel because those two companies do throw back the channel a little bit of coin, and it doesn't cost you an extra penny. So I appreciate it for those of you who have done that, either used Amazon or used Ebates, or perhaps used both. And by the way, on Ebates, they got every major retailer on there. So it's back to school shopping. It's a good way to take advantage. And it's those of you who've done that, thank you very much. Really, really do appreciate it. You can find some more weather information on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. And you can also take a look at my website, which is meteorologistjoecioffi.com. Have a great evening, everybody. Nick Cortez, James CIP, thanks again for hitting Super Chat tonight. Everybody, please be safe and make sure you pay attention to what the weather is like in your area if you're headed out, in case there's some severe weather running around. And we'll probably see you tomorrow, and we'll update you on Hurricane Lane, as it looks like it wants to at least come close to Hawaii at some point, but maybe it'll pull a Hurricane Hector and just stay to the south. Have a great evening, everybody. See you tomorrow.